We're starting off today by welcoming our friend, interior design expert, and our friend, Robin Garceau. Thanks so much for joining us today, Robin.
You're welcome. It's nice to be here again.
I know, it's so nice to see you. You've been a busy woman,
Yes.
and so you've been out and about, and we kind of skipped over last month, so we're happy to have you back in studio.
Thank you.
So today we're going to talk about bringing in how do we design and actually function when we have a very large open floor plan. So we were just chatting just a moment ago. A lot of people are building new floor plans and are building new, or if they're renovating, and so we all like this idea of open floor space, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're seeing a lot of this.
Yes, I'm working on a lot of new construction and renovation, and that's one of the big things. You want everything to be open. The problem with that is once you have all this big open floor space, how do you place your furniture so it doesn't look like a hotel or a bowling alley or, something that's not cozy anymore? It's just this wide open space, and you have to do, 10 seating areas to fill it. So that's really what our discussion is going to be about today.
Okay, because I know that's becoming very popular, and it feels nice to be able to have a wide open floor space. But yeah, then when it comes down to it, so you build this beautiful wide open home, but then where do you put your stuff so it doesn't look weird?
Right.
So you're going to help us today for people that are kind of having that challenge and trying to figure out, okay, where do I put my stuff so it feels, kind of feng shui? Okay, so you have kind of three ways to look at this: focal points, function, and flow. So let's start with focal points.
So the first thing you want to think about is your focal point. It could be an exterior view. It could be an oceanfront home. It could be you're on a nature preserve. You have a beautiful garden in the back. Those are your focal points that you want to be able to see all the time. I'm working on a house right now. It's overlooking a beautiful horse farm.
Oh, awesome.
So we wanted to orient our furniture so you can see all of that. You might have a focal point that's on the inside of your home, a fireplace, your TV, something that's really, really interesting that you want to focus on inside the house and put your groupings around that particular focal point. So whenever you're doing this, you want to, what is the most important thing and how do you want to group the furniture around it? So that's as far as focal points are concerned. And then you start going into, now that you know your focal point, how are you going to use the areas? What do you want to do with it? Is it just going to be a small eat-in area, so you're overlooking you're looking at the ocean, or you're looking at the horse farm? Or is it around your fireplace and you want a nice cozy setting for the holidays and make it a conversation area and not necessarily have a TV there? There might be a bar area that you want and you have it overlooking another sitting area, so you have a conversation area and a bar area as well. So once you determine those types of things, then you can move on to other areas.
Okay, I like that. A lot of times, too, people want to have their kitchen open up into the dining room or open up into the living room. So when they're cooking, you're having this conversation around if you're entertaining, you could be cooking, you're not cooped up in the kitchen, too. So could that almost be a focal point, or does that work?
Yeah, it definitely works because, as you know, everybody always integrates into the kitchen. Everybody goes to the kitchen no matter what. You could have a big, beautiful, formal dining room, and everybody is in the kitchen.
Exactly.
It could be in little chairs, but they're all there. So a lot of people are opening up their kitchens to their family rooms and making a decision to eliminate maybe a kitchen table and just do an extra large island and putting bar stools or counter stools around that, and that may flow into a real conversation area, which may flow into a dining room, which may flow into your family room with the TV. So it depends on the space and how you lay it out and how you work your way through each of those spaces. So the kitchen is definitely a big one.
Okay. I always think that's so nice when you're able to, especially with, holidays coming up, if you're going to be in the kitchen all day, if you're cooking and you have people coming over, it's nice to be able to have, if you have the space, to be able to have all the open spaces together, so that way there's room to breathe. And that way you're not by yourself all day. Or there's not a million people bugging you in the kitchen too, right?
And that's one of the considerations when you're building.
Yeah.
How many people do you want in your kitchen? Do you want to entertain a lot? Do you have the holidays and you're going to have 20 people here, and that's how you're going to orient this furniture based on something like that?
Okay. So let's move on to function. Because everybody functions differently, so if you have children, if you have grown children, if you have little children, if you have pets, that's probably something to think about. What do we need to think about when we're thinking about function?
You want to think about how the space is going to be used. Like I was just saying, there might be a sitting area for just your eat-in area in the morning, and you may have a dry bar with maybe a coffee machine or something there. You may want a sitting area just near a window that you can use for reading or meditation or something on that idea. You may want to fit 8 people around a TV in your family room. So you have to really think about how you want to use each space and what's going to give you the most functionality of that space.
When you're seeing these new builds right now, you mentioned you're seeing a lot of open floor plans. Are you seeing, are people having trouble, like where to put their couches, where to put their dining rooms? How do you work around that?
So if you have a wide open floor plan, I'm working on a project right now that's got a huge spans. And you want to think about furniture that tends to anchor areas, but also furniture that may blend two areas together. So what I mean by that is, if you're doing your living space and it blends into your dining room or another conversation area, you could do a big sofa on one side that anchors the room and maybe complement it with some kind of interesting chairs or conversational chairs or artsy, funky chairs or something on that idea. And then the sofa, you're seeing some sofas now with what's called a ledge back. And the back is actually made to sit on, so you can actually turn and talk to the people behind you.
Oh, that's cool.
So, and it's made for these wide open spaces, and it's okay to sit on the sofa. So, we all grew up. Don't get on the, get off the side of the sofa or get off the back of the sofa. Not anymore. So, you want to be able to use products like that so you can make an easy transition from one to the other. The other thing might be you use swivel chairs. So you can swivel from one side to another. And so you can have conversations with people on one side of you, and then you can turn and either see the view or have conversations with another person. So it's nice because you can have that versatility where the chair isn't just stagnant and faces one way. Another way to do it is either with ottomans or maybe it's like a day bed, but it's actually a sofa with no back.
Oh.
So what you do is, in the area that's transitioning to another area, you can use the ottomans or you can use that daybed sofa. That way you have places to sit, but you're not interfering with the view to yet the next area.
I see.
Okay? So there are definite ways to place those pieces around so you can have a nice transition from one to another.
So you're really incorporating both that function, how are you going to function, and then the next step that we're kind of started talking about is that flow concept. So you're really kind of incorporating both in there. I love the idea of being able to use furniture in multiple capacities, right? The idea of being able to use a chair for multiple ways, and that furniture, I love that. I'm going to go look at some of that for the next time I move and next time I buy a big, nice piece of furniture. I can just imagine the different pets up on there, and you're like, get off the furniture. Yeah, exactly. Kitty, go on.
One of the other things, too, that you're seeing in magazines and layouts and design is 2 sofas back to back. So you
Oh,
create two
interesting.
conversation areas back to back. And again, it's for wide open spaces or very large living rooms. And you have two separate conversation areas within that one space. So you may have the fireplace as your focal point. You put two sofas facing each other, and then yet again add another sofa on the other side and two more chairs. So you make multiple conversation areas,
Oh,
which
wow.
are really nice too.
Oh, wow. That's a big room.
Yeah, yeah, that's what these are, like wide open spaces, definitely.
Wow. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so what are some other ways that if you have this nice flow, you mentioned the furniture, but you were also mentioning to bring in some really, some nice art, or maybe some, as you talk about a lot, some nice window hangings.
Right. So you want to bring in
treatments.
elements, window treatments. You want to bring in elements that will also define the space.
Okay.
So obviously you have area rugs. You can define a space with a large area rug and have your furniture sit right on it. You can define your space with a very large piece of artwork. So that becomes a focal point in that one space. There are a number of things that you can do to kind of define that space without it looking like it's floating in the middle of your room, like in the middle of the space. You can put maybe a little table behind your sofa, which is done a lot, but what I like now are really narrow, lightweight tables that give you just enough definition, but not too much. Another way is to create a beautiful custom sofa. So I just did a sofa and it was floating in the room. And instead of it just being a plain back sofa, we pleated the back and then we put some jewelry accents on the back of it. So it turned out to be a beautiful focal point. So when you're sitting in the kitchen or you're coming from the kitchen into the family room, it's not just a plain back on a sofa. You create interest with the pieces that you have there.
So it's almost like a piece of art in itself. Your furniture is a piece of artwork rather than just you're sitting on your couch.
Right, exactly. You want to make the pieces interesting within themselves. So it's not just a sofa. It's not just a chair. What makes those pieces interesting where you don't have to do so many pieces to fill your space because you want to put the emphasis on those pieces themselves.
I love that idea. Always a pleasure finding out how we incorporate these interesting ideas for when we're designing our homes. So Robin, we talked a little bit about the functionality, we talked a little bit about the flow, and we talked a little bit about the focal points. Also touched on some furnishings that can define spaces. So you talked a little bit about area rugs and artworks. Also, a couple of things you mentioned, the side tables. Also, you said look at lamps and ceiling moldings. So not just look at this eye level, but also look up and down too for the area rugs.
Right. So when you're designing spaces, again, ceiling moldings are something like a coffered ceiling. You can absolutely do a coffered ceiling, but if you don't have the ceiling height for a coffer, you can do something called applied moldings. And what that is you design the molding around the space. So, for instance, one of the projects I'm working on has a round room, but it flows into the rest of the area. So what we're going to be doing is applying ceiling moldings in that round space. So now it's an interesting, beautiful area, but it defines just that space.
Okay.
So it can flow into the other rooms, but it's not, okay, we have a coffer in this area and a coffer in the other area. And if you don't know what a coffer is, it's just basically beams that come down, and you have decorative molding on the beams, and that creates a coffered ceiling. But if you don't have the ceiling height, sometimes it feels like it's coming into the room. So then what you can do is just put applied moldings and get a similar effect without the depth that you need for a coffer.
Okay. Okay. It sounds beautiful.
It is. It's really beautiful, and you have a lot of versatility and a lot of ways to do that. So I love doing interesting elements on the ceiling. Again, it creates details that you don't necessarily see all the time, and that's where interior designers can help you bring all that together, because it is something that you can overlook in a project, little details that you don't necessarily think of.
Oh my goodness, of course. All right, well, I think that kind of takes care of things. And of course, you can always look for Robin Garceau's articles and columns here on Go Local Prov. And of course, you can check out her website, which we always provide links to. She's a busy woman and can't wait to check in with you next time. You always provide fascinating ideas for us here.
Thanks, Molly.
So we're going to wrap things up with Miss Robin Garceau and hang tight as we get set up here for our next guest on Go Local Live.